I've been modeling BNSF for a few years now, and there are a lot of very nice models out there. But it's always been interesting that one of BNSF's most iconic locomotives has not been offered adequately in HO scale. BNSF has somewhere around 1,800 Dash 9-44CWs in their fleet, the vast majority of which are painted in the Heritage 2 paint scheme. Up to this point, there hasn't been many options for those who are trying to model this locomotive. The three that are offered are from Athearn, Kato, and MTH. The Athearn model is woefully inadequate and has many incorrect details and very poor detailing. The Kato offering is not much better, with incorrect details as well, and very old tooling with clunky details and overly thick grab irons. The MTH offering was surprisingly good. Not a bad model, however, for whatever reason, they didn't offer it in the Heritage 2 paint scheme, rather offering it only in the War Bonnet scheme, and the detailing still leaves some to be desired. Now enter ScaleTrains with their newly released Dash 9-44CW. It is a very nice model. There is a lot to like about it. This video is not going to be one of your standard reviews. If you'd like one of those, there are dozens of them on YouTube. This video will focus instead on BNSF specific details for those who are interested in modeling the BNSF locomotives. Beginning at the front of the locomotive, the most noticeable feature about this particular model is the arrangement of the doors underneath the cab, particularly on the conductor's side. BNSF has at least 3 different versions of door arrangements on this side of the locomotive, seen here. These door arrangements vary from order to order, and ScaleTrains opted to use this one. BNSF H2 units have a narrow handrail in the front and on the rear, whereas the older Dash 9s had a wide handrail that went much further out to the sides. With this narrower handrail, there is also a different bend in the inner handrails that go up against the nose of the cab, correctly captured here by the ScaleTrains model. Looking at the nose of the locomotive, there is a small metal plate between the 2 corner grabs that is present on the prototype, also present on the ScaleTrains model, though on the ScaleTrains model it is not as defined as I would like it to be. This line down the center of the roof of the nose is not there on the prototype. There are flag brackets that have been added by ScaleTrains, bonus points for that. On the windshield, you can see that there are 2 lines that ScaleTrains has added onto their glass. That is also present on all the prototypes that I've seen. I'm not sure what it does, but it's there. On the ScaleTrains model, you can see the orange through the glass, unfortunately, which kind of ruins the appearance of thin glass. Thankfully, this is easy to rectify by popping the windows out, painting the edges, and reinstalling them. Looking at the roof of the long hood, you'll see that there are several missing panels up here on the roof. That is correct for the BNSF units. There is also a very small raised panel that is left behind. ScaleTrains captured this, although perhaps a little bit more defined than what it is on the prototype, but they did get this detail correct. There are several different air conditioning units that can be found on these BNSF locomotives. ScaleTrains did accurately capture one of them. There are some other variations, and that varies prototype to prototype. Consult your pictures to see which one you need to be using on your model. There are 2 different roof versions on Dash 9s. The old versions of Dash 9s had a curved roof. On the BNSF H2 units, you'll see that the roof line is angled. There are 2 rows of doors and double sets of hinges as well. Notice on the exhaust stack how on the prototype the top of the stamped X is barely visible, and it is also accurately captured here on the ScaleTrains unit. BNSF units use 2 fuel fillers, as well as the sight glass, the fuel gauge, and fuel emergency shutoff switch. They also use the standard GE steel bell and not an E-bell. These two raised lines are not present on the prototype and therefore will need to be removed. On the rear of the locomotive, you'll notice that on the engineer's side there is a vertical grab, which is accurate for the BNSF H2 units. On the pilot, BNSF likes to keep their spare knuckles. There is one on each side. The holders here are okay. They're not as finely done as if you were to do an etched brass kit. The brake wheel on the ScaleTrains version does not match the prototype versions. It's better to replace this particular detail with a Katy brake wheel. Newer BNSF Dash 9s, including all of the H2s, use the 4-window cab. On the ScaleTrains model, they added some tint to it. However, it is too light. You can see through both sides fairly easily. Comparing to the prototype photo, the tint is far darker. This is a common problem with other manufacturers as well. Thankfully, it is easy to fix by popping the windows out and coloring the back of them with some tint or a Sharpie. On the sides of the hood, there are several panels that are properly rendered here as X panels here, here, and here, as well as a flat panel in an L shape located here. These are not present on some of the other model manufacturers and require fabrication with brass in order to make them correct. Behind the dynamic brakes, there are two X panels that are found on BNSF H2s. The older Dash 9s had a large single X panel, whereas the newer ones have two smaller X panels. On the prototype, you can see that the front one is a square and the rear one is more of a rectangle. They are two different sizes. On the ScaleTrains model, you can see that both of the X panels are the same size. They missed that the rear one was supposed to be a different size. There is no model manufacturer that has gotten this correct to my knowledge. So what are my thoughts on the ScaleTrains model? Well, if you're looking at building any sort of a BNSF Dash 9 in the H2 scheme, you really can't get better than what ScaleTrains has to offer here. It is a very nicely done model. They've gotten a lot of things right that are specific to BNSF. Yes, there are a few things that are not quite where they need to be, but I would say that the positives far outweigh any negatives that you might find on this model. If anyone is interested in modeling BNSF and one of these very, very common locomotives, I highly recommend looking at the ScaleTrains model. It is a great base to start from, and it should make an excellent modeling and weathering project.